Okay, I think we're live. It is the 5th of December, 2023. It's a Tuesday, and that means it's time for Gimbalabs Playground. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. It's good to see you all here. Some familiar faces, some new faces. Really happy that we have this chance to get together. I'm going to share screen to frame our work today, and we have a particular question to look at together. But first, a high-level overview. This is season 3 of Gimbalabs Playground. It launched in September, and it kind of follows, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, loosely the academic calendar going from September through May. You can see the dates of all of the playground sessions up until our final one on May 16th, 2024, right here on Miro. If you're with us in this meeting, this link was just shared in the chat. If you're watching this recording later, you can go to gimbalabs.com/playground, where you'll find a link to this Miro board right here. What do we do at Playground? Well, we get together for 90 minutes. We talk about stuff. It's pretty much all. And anybody is welcome to be a presenter. Here's how you sign up. All you have to do is get access to this Miro board. It's open, and like I said, you can access it at gimbalabs.com. You come to this part of the page. If I zoom out a little bit, you'll see I'm kind of in the top left corner of the content, and there's a chart right here. Find an open slot, one that's white like this. The grayed out ones are dates that we're going to take a break from Playground over the next few months. But any of these empty rows is an open presentation slot. You can write your name or the name of the group you represent, a topic for your presentation, and just some contact information right here, particularly so we can tag you on Twitter or on Discord leading up to the event. But that's really all. At that point, you're officially scheduled, and this is one of those very light structures. There's no reminder email sent out or anything. If you sign up, we expect you to show up when you said you would. So that's that. How does Playground usually work? We start at 1800 UTC, have a quick moment for this little overview I'm giving you right now, announcements from the community, and then we jump into the presentation or the discussion for that particular day. You can present however you'd like. If you've built a product and you want to pitch it, if you're trying to build a team, you can come with your well-formed ideas and share them. You can share a loosely formed idea, something you're just starting to work on, and ask for feedback, or you could start a wide open conversation about something you've been thinking about. Often, presenters at Playground do some combination of all of the above. Today, we're really going to try number 3. I'd like to bring a conversation to our group, and by looking at both specific examples, if anybody has any, and higher level visions for where we want to get to in the months and the years to come, I'd like to propose a topic to everybody. And we could see it right here. Here's today's date, December 5th. And this came out of a conversation Hince and I were having about a week ago, just about catalyst collaborations. And we dropped this on the agenda here. And so just to give this a very quick frame, I believe, and this is an opinion, I might be wrong, but I believe that one of the things that Catalyst is best for is introducing potential collaborators to each other. When we go out into the world and we share our ideas, and it can be very vulnerable to share an idea on Catalyst. That's a global ideation platform. There's a lot of people I don't know on there. And I'm trying to express something that really matters to me as a proposer, right? It can be a vulnerable space. But at its best, when we're all sending our signal out there as proposers, hopefully we can pick up on the signal that others are sending out and maybe meet collaborators. Indeed, that's how Gimbalabs got started. There was a successful Gimbalabs proposal back in Fund 2 of Project Catalyst. And it was originally two separate proposals. I had an idea around community education, and Gimbalabs co-founder Roberto Marano was serving the Dandelion distributed infrastructure. And we recognized that these were complementary ideas. We started talking about how we might collaborate, and it led us to start this organization that continues to find its way to this day. So maybe as a place to start, what I'd like to do is open the floor to any anecdotes that maybe anybody has. Have you ever met a collaborator on Catalyst? Or are you seeking collaboration right now in a proposal that you have in Fund 11? And then after we have the floor open for a little storytelling, maybe we can start to generalize and look ahead to how we can try to increase the role that collaboration plays in the Catalyst process. How's that sound for a loose agenda for today?
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. So let's start there. I'd like to just open the floor to storytelling. Before I do, let's just make sure there's a space to Kat Newman. Thank you. I knew I could count on you. We have a space down here in the bottom right-hand side where optionally, if you'd like to, you can contribute to taking notes on our conversation today. And don't let this box constrain you. If there's not enough room here, feel free to just keep adding notes anywhere on this great big Miro board. But story time, yeah. Anybody here have any success stories, horror stories, or otherwise about collaborating within the Project Catalyst ecosystem? Martin's got a hand up. Yeah, we can use the hand raising process. I like it, Nori. In the chat, Nori says collaboration speed dating. And if you decide that you have something that you're excited to share, make sure to use that hand raising icon and we'll just queue people up. Yeah, Martin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I met Adriano from Game Changer in Fund 5. So, and yeah, in 5 minutes I have a meeting with him. So
Nice, you got a few minutes. So wait, was it obvious that there might be a collaboration there right away? I mean, you guys have been talking about the overlap of both software and hardware. Was it clear to both of you right away, or was there a process of getting to that point of collaborating?
no, it was just town hall after town hall, and there was I think he was presenting his idea, and it was like, oh, that's exactly what I need for my payment systems. So because Game Changer is like you don't need communication back and forth for SIP30. It's just you know one single data upload, which you can do with QR codes. So yeah, that was perfect for me. Yeah, and I'm still doing cool stuff. We're now building, having a discussion about having like a IDE for smart contracts and Game Changer. It is very cool. I'm using the Monaco editor from Visual Studio Code now to integrate that all. And then it's just Helios script, Game Changer script. You can edit them side by side. And then you press the button and you don't have to install Nix or anything. It's just a web page you can copy. Even the IDE is not running on like a server. Well, that part is like very easy to copy and run yourself. So yeah, it's lots of cool stuff going on. Yeah.
That's incredible. I didn't realize you guys first met in after town hall. That's great. And for anybody who's not aware, there's a series of weekly Catalyst town hall meetings across the week and at different times to accommodate for different time zones around the globe. Do all town hall meetings have after town hall sessions?
A lot of them did have them or yeah, it's a little bit different now since the Swarm has done something, stepping back from that. I'm not sure. I'm not. I don't go to every town hall, but I was more.
It
in the
has
beginning.
continued. Now it's supported by Light Donation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But there's such a valuable venue. I always think about the after town hall sessions as that water cooler time at an in-person conference, right? And everybody says, when's the best part of going to a conference? Oh, it's on the coffee breaks when you're out there actually just talking to people and meeting people. And after town hall has always had that same vibe for me. It's such a great space.
Yeah, it's in the evening for me, so yeah, I cannot keep it up to do it every evening because there's so much stuff you can do. It's just it ruins my schedule for the entire day, It's too much, but yeah, I have to skip sometimes.
Yeah, it does. It does take some energy. It's interesting being able to like the presentation like of the conference and like the sessions take a certain type of energy, and then the after town hall, personal discussions, one-on-one discussions take a almost like a different type of energy. And it's strange. I didn't really think about it, but I was like, oh man, Wednesdays I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I was like, what did I do? I didn't do much. I just sat and visited with folks. And but no, it does take a bit out of you. Yeah.
So and I hope to use Andamio in the following Catalyst to do a course on Game Changer. So.
Oh, do you have one in, Martin?
I have a proposal. Yes.
Okay,
But
cool.
you never know if you're gonna get it.
That's true. That's true. I see some hands up.
Me too. I was thinking of the Hunger Games line, may the odds be ever in your favor. Harsha and then Tavo.
To be fair, I've met like so many people in Catalyst. I met you, I met Nori, I met Newman, and we all have like slightly different relationships and collaboration. I don't know if collaboration is defined as, oh, there has to be an absolute outcome for it that we can show, or like slightly more subtle, like me and Newman have a collaboration where we learn together. I don't know if it's a collaboration or just a friend. However it's defined. And with you, Nori, Gimbalabs folk and Odin folk, it's more like we are trying to create something together. And the reason I think these people I met were sticky is because when I'm with you guys, I get to like express what I want to do, and then we do it together. And similarly with you, you get to express and we do it together. So I think that was the sticky part for me.
Yeah, I follow that. Like the culture here is pretty nice, and I was recently reminiscing on my like time allocation, and that's because I did that time stamp also a year ago. I felt like that kind of the shift between collaborations in a sense when I started, to me, everything was, oh, Cardano, we opened up Project Catalyst, oh, so many interesting people. And it was more like protocol level relationship, which is a totally new thing because previously I just been in like work environments and never really like engage people in forums or in that kind of environment in that level where you compare to like meeting in Zoom and time and space, and also having this kind of different learning between each other. Like, okay, first the question, then we share our questions, and then we just reminisce and so like chat about other stuff too sometimes. And now where it has now when I did this timestamp again, what different was like the Cardano and Project Catalyst still there, but they are changed into like an idea of a product that is used by all of these projects, and these projects are people. And to me, I see like full name of like 50 plus people that I'm kind of working together, but we never really wrote it down, or we're not on the same charter. It's just all in my head where I see, oh, these are people working on that. So if I know that I need information relating to that kind of, I don't know, development or marketing or coordination or people, connection, events, like all these different things are involved and that takes to implement the project, I have now connection to. And that kind of has changed my vision of collaboration into like a totally different level compared to when I started. And yeah, it's just amazing to kind of be part of that, I guess, because you kind of know that you're not here alone, and we all have these kind of huge purposes that we seem to be aligned on, and we want to see each other success because the problems we solve are bigger than ourselves.
Right.
For story time, yeah, my introduction to all of this was Project Catalyst, and hanging out at the town halls and just seeing all the cool people and ideas. And then Swarm really pulled me into that kind of interactive, like every Saturday I look forward to that Swarm community meeting and jumping in and really working. And that kind of just leapfrogged to, I think I am actively collaborating with half of this Zoom meeting in different ways. People here, like I can count at least 6 of you that we have active collaborations going on. And I think that's the true magic of this is we've figured out how to do decentralized collaboration that doesn't involve you necessarily committing full time to one thing, but you can kind of contribute your skills and ability to a number of different areas in different ways and different commitment levels. And I think that's one of the magical pieces of this is it's not like lifetime employment like Japan used to have one company you get in when you're 21 and then you're there till you retire. It's more you can follow your passion, you can feel valued wherever you go because there's space for you somewhere. And it could be that from time to time you go, oh, this is my project, I'm just going to sink in here. But other times it may be just contributing fractional slices of yourself here and there and finding that. So yeah, I think that's the magic for me is we're figuring out how to do this new way of working together. And through kind of navigating those tensions that we come up with, we go, oh, it would be really cool to create an education onboarding thing. Or it would be great to be able to understand how to collaborate better together through these different mechanisms and patterns and things. And all those things, I think we're a highly evolving learning organization or network. And that excites me too, because we're always kind of bringing in new stuff, trying new things, seeing what works. And that's what keeps me here is that kind of culture, but it's really the people, like the people attracted to this kind of stuff are the coolest people in the world. And that's all of you. So that's why I'm here. And that's why I stay.
Harsha, I was paraphrasing on the green sticky, just where's the line between collaboration and friendship? You and I have a little bit of experience working on the S3 course, for example, but a lot of what binds us is just that I like your company, and it's nice when we have a chance to be in the same space together. And my understanding from friends who have been through the process is that one of the things that you're receiving when you get an MBA, you go to business school, is a network of collaborators, right? And access to a network of people who are going to support you on your journey in business as you move forward. And I've never thought of it that way before, but in retrospect, it feels obvious. Catalyst has provided for me a network, I think, of the same stature that I could have hoped for from, an MBA education with a high sticker price, maybe more efficiently and certainly more distributed. I don't think I would have been in the same MBA program as Hinson, for example. But I'm really glad we somehow found each other.
Yeah, that idea of the value in the network and reputation and uh, uh, what's the like the achievement, like if you go to an MBA program, then you're active and doing MBA stuff, so you get to see people see you doing the thing that you're you know that you are set out to do, like to achieve those goals in the context of stuff. So it's this kind of nice cellular membrane kind of like, oh yeah, here we are doing our programming thing. Here we are doing our, blockchain, etc. Yeah, I like that. I like that part of it. Yeah.
I think, if I could just chip in a little bit here.
Steve,
How y'all doing?
hey.
I mean, I've been here lately, much, if at all, but you guys are always on my mind, so it's good to see you. And one of the things, one of the thoughts that I've had over the last few months, and I think we're seeing it. We're kind of talking about that right now, but over what's coming towards us over the next 2 to 4 years, I think what we're going to see is a lot of people who have already gotten into the community at this point or are coming into the community at this point. What's always struck me is how locked in everybody is to their thing, right? How the Cardano protocol connects to their mind, and there's a thing then that they've got to do, like they know that they can do this. And, like the Buddha said, desire is the beginning of suffering, right? Then problems ensue. And when everybody starts on their individual path to build whatever thing that is that lives in their head. And you've got to, as an individual, people have to work through that process, because they don't want to give up on their idea too quick. But along the way, we develop these relationships with one another. And I think that what we're going to see is some reweaving, right? There's going to be groups of people who've met and connected, but they don't see any way towards or any reason to work towards working together. But as things become more sophisticated, I think those possibilities are gonna, it's gonna be like when you're mixing a cookie dough or a cake dough, it's just gonna blend in and blend in and blend in, and then there's gonna be a new concoction come from that, right? Where we will be able to connect certain ideas that didn't seem possible before. And I'm irrationally excited still, and I really I really don't contribute much except the perspective to all of this for the last couple of years. It's just, this is what it looks like to me as being somebody my age and having lived wanting something else besides what was presented to me. And I really think that it's just going to get easier and easier to experience that something else that I've always missed, and I've maintained pretty regular contact with Mercy over the last few months, and that just kind of has just made that feeling grow stronger. Like we're so early, we don't know what to do, but it's getting clearer. And I think the technical work everybody involved with Gimbalabs and all of the other groups in the ecosystem is doing is going to make some of these thoughts. And I don't think that we've ever been unrealistic. I think what we've always done is underestimated what a skeleton the protocol is, right? It just takes a lot of time to knit together the tissues and create the organs to make it a whole body.
It's really good to hear you, Steve. Yeah. I agree. I share your current optimism, and more see everything we've done as part of what had to be learned together along the way. Hinson.
Yeah, so maybe I could also share something on another flip of the side as well. Like I've been in Cardano ecosystem like 2 to 3 years, and for a lot of the time, I think that I might be possible to build something which is somewhat meaningful, at least in my mind. But for most of the time, is that actually there's already someone working on that specific task that you have been thought about. You can bring the value to the ecosystem or community. And I think Cardano is an ecosystem which has kind of had this problem more seriously than any other ecosystem. Like for other ecosystem, let's say for Ethereum ecosystem, they have the core developer come up pretty early to have the Web3.js or either.js working together. And then they have a bunch of kind of big forces to build this infrastructure together. But inside Cardano, the information is pretty much very scattered. So for a lot of time, when I have an idea and I want to build something, it's actually somewhere in the communities. And what's interesting is that over the past years, I've observed a pattern that in Cardano ecosystem, usually the same problem has been solved like a few times in different places. And it is really tough if you look into that from the ecosystem perspective, because there's a lot of engineering effort or a lot of brilliant minds wasted just by solving the same problems. So I think this is really tough. Like when we try to do the kind of collaboration in the community, you have to be, or I try to keep learning to be extremely critical to myself. Like I come up with an idea at this moment. On the next moment, if I see something similar or there's already existing solutions, I have to try hard to convince myself or try to make a decision whether it still makes sense to continue with something which I have been very kind of mentally invested onto it. Like maybe I have curated an idea for 3 months, but what if there's another community members is actually having another nicer solutions? It may be sometimes it makes more sense to join the forces to help them to build that solutions, but just give up your kind of ego or mental investment onto your own ideas somehow. So this is really tough. But for a lot of the time, but also for some of the time, your idea is actually more niche than the existing solution or other solutions. So on that side, somehow you have to keep consistent with your thoughts and try to convince other that this is somewhat more a better solution than any other ecosystem solutions. And it is like really a tough process, whether you have to either convince yourself or convince others to try to join forces, especially in the kind of open source or ecosystem collaborative setting. For a lot of the work, we usually do it for voluntary purpose, or we build it because we need it, but we are not kind of directly incentivized by any monetary terms or any private interests. So for a lot of time, I think it's a bit more difficult than a typical team setting when we try to align a goal, because everyone comes with different demands. So somehow you have to communicate well. And I would say collaborative effort is usually much more complicated or difficult than a private team setting when you try to work on one things. But the upside is that when you try to spread your words on certain things, usually people would point you to the correct directions. Like recently, I tried to look into building something off-chain transactions in Rust, and I thought there isn't any existing solution on ecosystem. But when I tried to pull up with a Catalyst proposal, someone point me to 2 different repositories. So currently, I kind of pick my mind to kind of try to join in TX Pipe's Palace transaction builders side to help them to build the transaction building instead of just going through my own plannings. I have said a month ago. So this is really a tough process, but meanwhile, this tough process could point you to the correct or right directions, which is more beneficial to the ecosystem as a whole. Yeah, so this is some of my take in the previous months or a previous year.
So Hinson, you had an idea, and then you found TX Pipe, who's been around here, and now you're working with them, and it's kind of this process. It's like, well, I have my own sort of way of doing it, but then collaborating with them. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, actually, for a bit more context, as recently I implemented the lower level API on Mesh, and it has a dependency on Cardano serialization library, which is originally written in Rust. And for my upcoming project, I will have my backend built on Rust, so I have to build the thing. And when I try to, when I try to look into that implementation, I have all the kind of the architecture layout already. What I need is just go straight for implementations, and then I have the solution for myself. But when people point me to the TX Pipe's recent implementation, it's actually pretty fresh. Like they have the pre-out merge like in 2 weeks ago, and everything is still very low level and only have the kind of the very simple things there. But some of the clicks is that I know their team is pretty solid. To have a bit more context, I saw the engineer, the core engineer working on that particular pull request is someone I have met in Dubai in Cardano Summit like a month ago, and I knew him in person, and I knew him. He's very, very solid. So it's pretty much more makes sense for me to maybe just work together to have a more kind of solution not only built by me, but with any other brilliant minds. Maybe we have a better architecture as a result. Because after all of these, my angle is not just getting some kind of reputation out of community that I have built something, but it's really matter for my next project to have something solid to be relied on. So so this somehow of my thought process recently is quite interesting. Like I have to beat myself for the idea I have like 1 or 2 months ago. Like I have been planning all the things, but at the end of the day, it maybe makes more sense for me to join in a kind of a bigger teams to work on the same problems. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see what you're talking about is like the development of the idea, because maybe you collaborate for a while, and Nori talking about this sort of contribution where you find it, and that is I think that's a perfect example, and that meeting somebody in person, and sort of developing that like friendship trust, kind of like, oh yeah, I resonate with this person. This feels like the right way to go. And then maybe you loop back around, or, like you said, like, how does it fit into the bigger picture? And one of the things that Steve had mentioned was this idea of making a collaboration without like a distinct or a definite outcome or goal, but sort of an emergent goal, or a goal that develops over time. I really like that. With our I really like that.
Yeah, quite recent, interesting experience to share.
Yeah, it's perfect.
You said a few really great things there, And I love this concept of, look, for the project I'm building, I need this tool, so I'm gonna contribute to that tool is great. We're thinking in similar lines on some of the projects I'm working on. But one of the things you got me thinking about is Idea Scale actually as this historical repository of what's out there. There's so many ideas that even though they're not even funded, have been built anyway or have been developed from proposals. And to think about the many, I wonder, this might be something to bring to the Lido team, for example, like how can we use the historical archive of Catalyst proposals to help people discover projects, even if they're not they're not timely for a certain funding round. It's just, has anybody ever done this before? Because that's incredible. That was the resource you followed to find Palace, for example.
Yeah, I think it's maybe there's a kind of a long-lasting problem inside the Cardano ecosystem is that we somehow lack one kind of a central indexer of community projects or open source projects, so that for a lot of the time we have to spend a lot of time to really figure out whether something is built or not. Just that simple question is really troublesome for a typical kind of engineer in the Cardano ecosystem. But there's something similar kind of inside the ecosystem, like maybe in the Cardano documentation hosted by IOG, it has something similar, but no one is actually looking at that. So we still lack a kind of a highly recognized kind of central indexes to point people to different places when we have some sort of seed ideas. Yeah, just throwing the ball here. If any people here got any idea on that.
Hence, I really liked how you said that, but it's also exactly the thing that has been said that just makes a lot of the community sneer. You want centralized something, it doesn't matter what it is, you want a centralized source of information, it'll get fucked up, it'll get corrupt, and that's that, it's one of those things where we want what we want, even though we want everything decentralized at the same time. And like, you should go look up Big Pay, like he's got this way, he's promising everything Cardano in one location, and
yeah,
and like, and I don't mean this personally, but there's sometimes the way he says things, they are so crass, and it's like, you have to kind of get over your emotional reaction to the way some people present, because it's not that he doesn't have, some credibility in the community. He's got real history. He's been around since before, mainnet went live. And, there are these guys, they will dive into it no matter who's putting it out. And, it's tricky. We're in a...
Yeah, the dynamics is really complicated. I
agree. It is. Because it's very technical, but it's also very emotional, right? We have a visceral reaction to some things, and it might be better to just, totally detach our emotions from shit, but it's hard, because our emotions are also the seed for our hunches. And it's like, I got a hunch I don't want to work with this guy, and that can become self-fulfilling prophecy, and it can be fully justified to feel that way. It's so tricky.
Yeah, definitely.
That decentralized bit is something I've thought about a lot. Like, we're so trained in how software is built or how websites are done. We're coming from this Web 2 world. So everyone's like, let's make a spreadsheet and collect all this data, or let's create this database and people can contribute to it. But it's still like this centralized, it's in a database, somebody controls it. And we have all the tools now that we can start to change how we think about it. And the conversation should be around protocols and metadata standards. And then we can be publishing this data into onto the Web3 stack and have hashes on blockchain pointing to stuff in Arweave, for example, or whatever. And then you can have processes and systems that can like scan all of that and display it in a certain way, but anybody can do that. It's not one person deciding how to display it. Or getting the data onto Web3, there could be a proliferation of, oh, I'm going to create a simple website that allows you to post this kind of metadata if you don't know how, and I'm just going to charge you 1 ADA to do it, or whatever. There's a proliferation of front-end pieces, and if we focus on the API, the metadata, the protocol, then we open up the access to this data, and then we put the data out there in a way that anybody can use it in any way. And that's where I'd love to have those kind of conversations go. So what's the metadata standard, and what's the CIP we need to write? What's the protocol we need to write? And then we really get that data out there and starts changing the way we think about data itself. And then a lot of these conversations kind of go away, and we start to retrain ourselves to think that way. Because I think that's the biggest hurdle, is we fall back into the old patterns of thinking, saying, oh, we'll just create a spreadsheet, or we'll create a Google form and everybody submit their data and we'll collate it for you. But we're not talking about the fundamentals of what it means to be decentralized in a data layer perspective. But yeah, thought I'd throw that in there.
Ava.
Oh, wait. Well, one thing, or not one thing, but there is a thing I'm trying to also pursue in this network, that is to figure out how to do decentralized project management and what does it even mean. And to me, like one big part of that is like, how do you collaborate? And what you like Hinson were like hinting to is like, how do you get information to one place or even find it? And then I think the most important is to have the data shareable in like machine readable version. And this is where my kind of like a few recent experiments were like recognizing contribution, and there is so much ways you actually can label your activity or your asset you do. And so that's like gives one part. And then what I see is what Andamio is doing is like the I10 learning experiments, which is what do you need in order to execute that project? So if you do have an idea, I want to create, I don't know, what text, what do you need for that? I need this, what knowledge. And then from this, I would assume if you have a better repository of skills you need, then you kind of like different perspective. You don't look for exact solution, but you look for the components to build the solution, because there can be different like ways to get to that same outcome. And perhaps that kind of will map it out a bit better. And also then the decent project management side of things, that will be like telling you what are the experiments, like also like titles or yeah, it's harder to kind of demonstrate that, but I would feel like milestone titles or asset names basically, which come out from contributions. And if you say, yes, I want, again, the specific component to build for this bigger, larger idea, then you might find an exact match, or not maybe an exact, but similar match. And then you already have like a skill set and network who has done it, and have like a different view of how to share data. So you share data, what just Norris mentioned, on protocol, although we are just right now, we are like in baby steps where we don't even visualize our data we collect, but we just collect it. But for me, it's important to have let's churn in the data, because that's already like huge part of work. How do we even produce similar standardized information so that we can read it even if all the different people are recognizing it slightly different ways, but they agree on the like principles of what they want to capture.
Ooh.
I hear a similarity. No, Newman, you go first. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that like making an agreement, protocols, things that are open, needing governance and agreements. So collaboration and the sort of Venn diagram of here's collaboration and here's governance, and how all that's shifted for us, just as a point.
Evo, that was one of those over the years I've recognized that sometimes I have to go back and rewatch the thing you just said because there was so much there, and that was one of those moments. But at a high level, one of the things you just got me thinking about is the similarity or kind of like the recursive nature of the problem of both what Hinson was talking about with regards to who else is implementing this idea, right? Who else is working on the same problem at the highest level, and then drilling down from there to what are the component parts. And every step of the way, we can ask that question. Okay, I'm building for this. I need these components. Which of those exist? What are my options? Who's building those things? We can ask that question, keep going through. And niche applies up and down, right? There are always going to be some cases where I might know full well that something has been built, but want to implement it myself anyway. Maybe it's because at a high level, I'm trying to address a different niche. Maybe I like the challenge of building that thing, right? Maybe I'm trying to learn. In Plutus PBL, for example, we do all sorts of inefficient stuff just to give people a chance to experience that first step, right? So they can then appreciate the tools that have been built for them and maybe be more likely to adopt those tools and participate. Oh, that was really hard. I don't want to do that again. Who helped me with this problem already? Okay, great. So we can situate people like that. But then to all of this, the question that's on my mind, like, sure, we can talk about the centralization or not as both a feature and a bug at the same time, right? And that's going to be a vibrant tension, I think, moving forward. Do we want to have a centralized repository of all of the options? Yes, that would be very convenient. That would be very nice. Do we want to have a single portal through which all traffic flows? Maybe not. Oh, well, how do we balance those two things? That's a hard problem. But setting that aside, who's actually gonna do it? Is there a business model, for example, for committing one's self to building that portal that you can use to discover all of the options that are out there for building the solution you want to build, for finding the component parts? It would be really exciting to define a viable business model for that. But I'm not sure. And maybe that's a challenging problem itself. And this is where I think we're left with only the option that Nori just laid out. We just have to create standards so that this thing we're talking about can emerge. It would have been nice if one or more of the founding entities was fully committed to providing this discoverability of resources across the ecosystem. They're not. In fact, they're too often competing with each other.
Or us.
To rebuild the same thing again, right? So we're not getting it from the top. We're not getting it there, right? Let's build another stable coin. Let's build another serialization library. Let's build a replacement for DB Sync. These are the things that the founding entities focus on. Yes, there is a Cardano developers portal, but it needs to be better supported. And the team who works on the developers portal is awesome. They're responsive, they get updates done, but they're understaffed and underfunded from within their own organization. So as nice as it would be to count on a founding entity to make sure that this central repository exists, here we are still considering its merits. And in the long term, maybe that's a great thing, because we get to try to build grassroots systems by thinking about, like Nori is saying, once again, like the nature of the shape of the data that needs to be shared in order to achieve these things. And we'll see. But competition, it always seeps back in.
Well, you know, I think watching the DeFi platforms in Cardano, you know, the DEXs, right? They're trying to, there are different implementations of how to resolve concurrency issues in a high traffic situation. And I don't think that we know which one is the best yet, you know, because we haven't, compared to the, you know, the other part of the crypto world, you know, we're not even going full gas yet. You know, we have no idea which one's going to be best, you know, and I think that probably that status of technical solution, you could probably say it about a bunch of different things that need to happen on the Cardano protocol. We need to see different solutions just to know which is the best one, or which is the best one for a particular situation. And I don't think we know that yet. I mean, I may be wrong because I'm not in these low level conversations. So, you know, but we'll see.
Newman, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, it's one of those from way back when, and perhaps one of the things that I can offer, the whole idea of the portal, and the open standard. Back in the day, the portal was Yahoo directory, and that's where if you had a website, it was a big deal to try to get it into the Yahoo directory, and it was centralized. You had to like submit it in a form, and and then it grew, and people were trying to like game and et cetera, but it was a thing. And if you were one of those first bits and you could run with it, it was a business model. Then Google, the search engine, came along, and they created something that was emergent based on just HTML pages, something that could crawl. Their crawler was called something, but basically it was a teeny little piece of code. It was just like a little thing that went, and it created a thing called PageRank, and started this real infrastructure around getting into this thing and knowing what was up. But it was just a teeny little bit of code, an algorithm, but a real different mindset shift. And I think that's what we were talking about with the portal and discovery versus sort of an open standard that is emergent, because you can find things without either way. But in this tsunami or tidal wave of information, like the Google model won out. This thing, but that has sort of changed in the fact that now there are all these, like, all the information is not on the internet. So right now, because of the prevalence of social media, like, it's really more important to like be in these siloed networks. So like the big, the fascia. Was it Steve that was talking about the skeleton doesn't really matter anymore? It's more the little organs. It's just like, oh, are you doing well in Instagram, Meta, or X, or and they don't even have the same names. They're calling them different stuff. So it's interesting that blockchain gives us a whole another a whole other ecosystem to work with. But it has something to do with collaboration. It has something to do with business, the business model and centralized sort of organizing perspectives, if you can call like Cardano, the triumvirate of Cardano organizations as perspectives. Yeah. That's a nice trip down memory lane. It's still important.
I think Google is a perfect example that kind of reinforces what we've been talking about is Google's success was because they were able to figure out a way to scan all the data, come up with relevant search results. And the technology, the math that they used was something called eigenvectors, but Google was built upon open, decentralized information in the form of all these thousands of web pages around the world controlled by the individual people maintaining that specific point of data. And they're able to publish whatever they want through TCP/IP, W3C standards, HTTPS, whatever it is. These are all standards that allow all that data to be available and to be published and to be changed and to be consumed. And Google just built something on top that was fairly successful as an aggregator of that information. But the core data is still individual web pages that are out there. And that's kind of, I think we need to be thinking like Web 2 did it. We came up with Facebook, Google, Amazon's out of it as these centralized things, but the underlying data that powers almost all of that is still individuals being able to say something or share something. And now we have a way of adding value to that through the blockchain layer, where it's not just information, but it's information plus the potential exchange of value. So we should be using all that. I mean, not to say that Lido Nation won't be the next Google of Cardano, but as long as they're pulling their data from the blockchain or Web3 sources, then anybody else can try and duplicate that or create stuff on top of that. The data itself, which is the important stuff, isn't behind a firewall. Or it could be if the person who has that information now decides to hide it again. Like, we want that total control over your own data. We don't want it in someone else's database. And we've already done it. Google's done it. Like, we need to like remember these lessons. Yeah, open standards are important.
What are the open standards? I mean, there's that idea of the open collaboration standard. Like, what's the metadata of collaboration? But what are the open standards? Like, I always think about, because you're talking about like individual and making that contribution and agency and ownership. I always think about Atala Prism and DIDS and SSI, all the identity layer stuff. But I still haven't found, other than what Randall showed us a couple, last week or so, like I haven't seen anybody do anything like really real with it. Nori, what are the open standards that are out there now? And is it concept? Is it solution? Is it product?
I think that's the conversations we need to have, is what open standards do we need? Like, yeah, the SIP process is good. We have a whole bunch of standards through there. But I think one of the key missing ones is the rich metadata standards that allow communities to self-declare, we're a community and here's what we're about, or projects or individuals or whatever it is, so that the community as a whole can go and fetch that data and mix and match and display it in whatever ways they want to. So like you said, I wish I knew all the Catalyst proposals that were related to this topic. Well, we have all the tools in place to say, okay, API, suck it all out of IdeaScale, throw it into an LLM so it can auto tag and classify all the proposals in a useful way, and then feed that back into some kind of publish it on blockchain or some Web3 technology, so then anybody can go and query that stuff. And then there'll always be services on top. Somebody will go, oh, it's horrible to query blockchain. It takes 3 hours to get through all that. So somebody will create a centralized database, DB sync kind of thing that to make the most of it.
Right. And this gets us to the commons,
Mhm.
right? Like here's the commons, here's the green grass, or here's the watering hole. And then that's where the what did he call it? It was like competition and collaboration mix up kind of word, like comp I don't know. It was something. It was, yeah, but there's this idea that the predator prey, for instance, the predator prey relationship is a collaboration. It's not necessarily like what we think of as competition is also a collaboration. Teams that play each other in a big sport, they are competing, but they're collaborating at the higher level, at the league level, or the sport level.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Everyone's thinking about the infinite game where to win collectively is everybody gets to keep playing, but certain people are going to be better at doing certain things or have unique viewpoints, and they should be rewarded for that through a collective market mechanism where people go, ooh, this is super useful. I'm going to use this and I'm willing to pay for it.
Yes. Yes. I just got, yeah.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Oh yes, yeah. I just wanted to say a comment about the query and database thing about Cardano. It is actually really hard to query the blockchain data in Cardano, because like what I found, because I'm a data analyst, I was trying to make a project in Cardano blockchain, but like there's some old links that say like BigQuery collects all the data from the blockchain and stores it in a BigQuery database, and you can query that data. I looked all BigQuery, it's not there. Then there's another link about Graphen SQL that you can create the data there. You go there and it's a repository that you can get that data from GitHub. But like there's like a lot of resources, like for example, what most of the data analysts do, that I was working with some of them at the projects, they just scrape the blockchain stores, the what websites that are out there to get the data that way. So there's definitely like some problems while getting the data directly from the blockchain. Because what I understand, I'm not an expert, is that you cannot query directly the blockchain. You can only query the database that collects the data from the blockchain. And this is for the data community is like kind of confusing, because they're used to just like, okay, I'll just query with SQL. That's all I have to do. So yeah, I just wanted to add that little comment there. Nice to meet you all.
thanks for that, and thanks for being here today. Story time was inspiring, but with only a short amount of time left, I'm wondering if we could shift gears just a little bit. And Nori, maybe I could put you on the spot. I noticed these two little links down here that got dropped in. I personally believe that Catalyst can be improved. And if I were going to try to design a plan to improve it, I would start from an intention to try to enable more collaboration among proposers. I would love to see as a success metric more combined proposals, more moments when people are meeting each other and saying, oh, your idea looks like mine. And rather than that spurring a competition for votes, that inspiring a collaboration among builders who can build something better than separately. And there will always be reasons to compete. Steve's example is great, right? Maybe we don't know the one best way. We don't know the best pattern for concurrent transactions at scale because we haven't seen a chance yet. Perfect. That's a great example. Let's continue to compete there. But let's do it in a collegial way where is there maybe some way that the risk and the benefit might be shared across competitors in trying to build that process that works best. Nori, I'm so excited about this new concept that you've been writing about. Would you be willing to take us for a little tour of this in that context?
Sure. Over the last little while, and this was through a Singularity Net initiative to create some structure for a new thing. I started thinking about a concept called request for collaboration as a kind of counterpoint to a request for proposals. And just reflecting that most innovation funds, Catalyst, Singularity Net, all of them, most that I've seen, follow a kind of standard format where there are themes or categories, the community thinks about them, puts in proposal ideas, there's some form of quality assurance, and then we vote on them, and then people get funded. And then there's some reporting mechanisms, and then the cycle repeats. And I started reflecting a little bit on some of the observations around that. And some of the key ones that I saw were proposals are made, but there's no mechanism to encourage collaboration or collaborative ideation on solutions. Proposals are typically made in isolation. Community feedback is rarely useful in improving the proposal because the reviewers are not committed to the success of the proposal. So often the comments are very superficial or just enough for the reviewers to get paid to do so. And they're not like super deep, meaningful contributions to actually change the proposal in a better way. It's a lot of that. Voting using governance tokens tends to concentrate voting power into the hands of the few over time. Winner-loser dynamics foster competition, so it encourages secrecy over transparency and creates waste for the losing proposals. So like Fund 10 was the classic 2,000 different people and organizations put forth proposals, and only 20 got funded. That's thousands and thousands of wasted hours of work through the community that we're okay with throwing away. And there's lack of cooperation between teams. Most of the work is done in silos once teams are funded. If a team struggles to deliver, there's no incentive for help from the wider community to support them and make sure they're successful. And while funding pools or challenges outline specific key objectives, the funded proposers don't align or coordinate their built solutions, leading to fractured solution environments where we're not strategically building, we're building in silos and piecemeal, and very rarely is there alignment between what's being built. So we seem to be like doing this drunken walk towards this objective, but there's no like, we're not running there for sure. We're stumbling back and forth in this drunk walk kind of thing. So I started thinking about, can there be an alternative? So started thinking about this request for collaboration mechanism where it's an alternative to the competitive mechanisms, and it's really kind of an open kind of function where, I don't know if let me see if you want me to share my screen just to walk through the steps.
Yes, absolutely.
I need permission to do so.
Oh, sorry. Granted.
Okay. So yeah, so the innovation process here is starting with reflection and orienting. So this is just to stop and reflect where we came from, where we're at, understanding the context and diverse viewpoints, what's happened, what went well, what surprised us. And then from there, we start to collaboratively sense opportunities and do some research. So deeply sense and listen to what's wanting to happen next. Where's the collective field pointing to what's seeking to be born? It's not a time for solutions, but to find and surface opportunities, challenges. It's about finding the why. And then after spending some time as a community doing that, we start to prioritize some of these things that we've sensed. Which ones are most important? Which ones do we want to work on next? What order? This is a bit of a strategy piece for the community. And then we get into ideation. And this is, I guess, equivalent to the previous proposal phase, but it's really ideation on exploring the what as a community and really leaning into some yes and thinking and stating some experiments we can take and deciding as a group which ones to move forward. And then based on that, there's team forming and collaborative engagement to say, okay, the community wants to do these 7 experiments. Who wants to be a part of which one? And starting to do that, and then moving through prototyping phase where the teams work together on a prototype and try to get as quickly as possible to test the hypothesis. And then if that goes well, it can go to further refinement. If the experiment's failing, then we can stop it altogether. So having this really rapid iteration cycle. But both successes and failures are used as inputs into the next cycle, which again kicks off the reflection and orientation piece. And then, yeah, some of us are exploring some supportive patterns and framework like the common sense or S3 patterns, which has stuff for orientation, structure, transformation. And then thinking about how do you onboard and educate people into this new model, as well as some form of contribution and treasury management. So the funding really goes towards rewarding contribution in this new model. It's not about winning proposal. It's about actually participating and contributing and being rewarded through that. So yeah, very high level, that's kind of the shape of this request for collaboration kind of system, and really looking for interested people who want to explore that, flesh this out.
Is that a public document at this point?
It is publicly open for comments. And I can open it up if people want to jump in and help co-shape this thing. I'm very happy to do that. But that's kind of, yeah. I got to a point of enough clarity where I could write all that down a few weeks ago after a lot of different thoughts. So, yeah, happy to share that.
What is the current state of this? Because I find it really interesting as well.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd love to work that out with some people who are interested, but one high level vision might be if we think this is great and we can come up with some concrete use cases, maybe we can put in a treasury withdrawal proposal through SIP 1694 and say, we'd like to fund this idea. Let's start with $1 million ADA or whatever and do some small experiments. And as it proves that it's working, then ask for greater amounts. And eventually, like, this is an alternative to Catalyst in a way that's less competitive, much more collaborative.
Yeah, this is also what I'm thinking as well. It may be a good idea to have this direction to replace the existing Catalyst, because something I was seeing over the past few funding rounds is like some big parties are requesting fund to do the auditing on the smart contract, which is closed source. And then for their own business purposes, it's not really a good thing to see. I would say, as of we're using the community fund to do things. So if all of the kind of the proposals are open for collaboration and for others to join in, I think it's better serve the original purpose of Project Catalyst, or it's more aligned with the original purposes. Like there's no big parties or private entities just asking for funding to do what they're going to do anyway, but it's more of a serving the goal itself, more focus onto the goal, but not with the private results. So I think this is really interesting, but the next question for me is how to have this idea kind of more penetrated into community and get some traction. That's maybe another topics.
I'm really excited to see how work starts on this request for collaboration process. And I can imagine a few kind of sub ecosystems within Cardano where maybe it could take root and some experiments could be done. But it seems like that pretty quickly leads to this need that you described about shared metadata standards. When you imagine staying at a very high level, just kind of visiony work, Nori. How early in an implementation process that you can imagine for request for collaboration would the work of designing shared metadata standards start?
Probably pretty high. Like if you look at, I had another link there to Odin, and that was kind of a network community forming loosely around this kind of idea of collaboration. And in there, in Fund 10, we put in two proposals. One was discovering and creating metadata standards so that we're able to do a lot of these things. And then the second one was the PBL around educating these new kind of patterns and systems for the onboarding to this new way of working. And I still think those are two very important things. And the metadata conversation has kind of been put on hold, but today it came up a lot. So I think it's still a really important thing to think about.
I want to make sure to include the Space Trains YouTube video in the Andamio reading list. It's among such a few really critical background pieces.
Yeah, I dropped the Odin link tree, and it'll link to the Rebuilding Society on Meaning YouTube video, as well as the Sociocracy 3.0 website. And 3 of the books that kind of drove this was Reinventing Organizations, Brave New Work, and Leading Beyond Change.
Steve.
I really appreciate all that, Nori. I think as you develop this and refine it further, to me it seemed to be clear that there are going to be 2 avenues of funding within the Cardano community once, assuming 1694 becomes the form. Charles has talked about it. Other people have talked about it, and what I like about that conversation of another funding mechanism with a formal Cardano governance structure is what Charles has, dropped about it, concerning his desire for a budget, right? Which has always bothered me about catalysts. And, after all this time and time to reflect, clearly Catalyst is meant to be the Y Combinator. I mean, Charles fucking said it, and it's just kind of like a wide Wild West. Anybody can come, anybody can propose, and and because it's the only funding mechanism, then it gets dominated by the big names in the community. If formal Cardano governance exists and a formal budget exists saying we're going to put X amount, on a regular basis into infrastructure or whatever it is, that you don't have to go through this exhausting process of that Catalyst sets up, a 3 or 4 month process, right? It can just be an ongoing thing. We've got this much in our budget this year, and when the proposals have come in and they've been approved, out goes the money. And I think that what you're talking about, Nori, is one of those larger ideas that should find its way into whatever budget categories, are developed. I don't know. There's still so much possible. There's still so much room for it to be a good process, whichever way you decide to come into the community.
Ken. Hey, man.
Hey, um, like when I think about sort of the ideal process for contributing to the community, like at least from my perspective, um, I think of being able to focus on what I'm doing and then publishing what I'm doing in a way that it can be integrated with what other people are doing. So thinking about things in terms sort of like a knowledge graph where you build up your own knowledge base as a graph, and then you can connect it with other knowledge graphs. The idea of having metadata on chain, you want to be able to have some validation that your whatever you submitted was submitted by you before a certain snapshot or something. That's the sort of the idea of what you want to be able to store, so that if you come up with something, there's a clear record that it wasn't stolen by someone else later on or something. The idea of having an open source knowledge base, like I don't know about thinking of things at the project level, like the granularity of how things are funded, whether it's a good idea to just think about things at the project level or have a finer grained perspective. So like maybe just components that can be, and the process of setting things up so that you can compose different components together, or you can compose ideas and you can attach ideas to code and stuff like that. And the whole concept of like requesting for collaboration, if you're talking about things even like this meeting, like where people are having a discussion about ideas, like if you can build content where people are discussing a specific topic, like you can use that as a mechanism for incentivizing or funding things. Like if you have people who put money into collaboration ideas, or into like maybe they want some specific topic to be resolved, or some piece of code, some idea to be fleshed out, and they could put money into that idea, or and open the door to people that they see in the community who have the knowledge to work on that sort of idea. Like instead of having a joint fund, or having a process where you have voting first, because in a sense when you're voting before the process of actually working on something, you're moving the competition to before the thing actually exists. And so if you have two different people who are working on the same thing, it's good to have competition between projects that are already in production, because it will incentivize them to make what they have better, instead of incentivizing them to fight over the right to build something in the first place. Like as far as being able to fund things or fund people before the projects or before the work actually exists, I think that you could have mechanisms where people can, if people are getting funding, like maybe they can, or they're getting funded in different work that they're doing in the community, having mechanisms for them to collaborate or to donate donate funds back to other areas that they want to see. Like if you have someone in the community who knows of another project that isn't funded and they're really interested in helping to support that, like the ability for you don't have the ability to put funds into the treasury for Catalyst. But if you have the ability to put funds in to whatever funding mechanism you're using, maybe target specific ideas and pieces of infrastructure that you want to get funded, then that could help people to see what maybe what they'd want to do better, what is people want more, and it would focus people on paths that they can take that would be better for the community, as well as being able to have the autonomy to choose what they want to work on as individuals.
Yeah, I think that sums it up, Ken. I know that you have been focused on this topic for a long, long time, as long as I can remember. And as a matter of fact, going back to story time, I think it was Ken that I met in after town hall so long ago, and he was just like, "Look, we can do better with this whole collaboration thing." And now, years and years later, you know, we're still at it and still doing. It's really great. Yeah, I think that what you said and matched up with what Nori said, and this also shared in the chat with there's a lot of, I think here's one idea to try on for size, is that we all went through this process of Project Catalyst to kind of see to get an experience of how it can be and have a lived experience of seeing a system centralized or seeing how the inside of it goes. And now we can take that experience and build the next thing. And it feels like we're talking about the next thing. And it could be like a teeny little change. Like, for instance, Project Catalyst feels a lot different, that we have 3 phases: concept, solution, and product. That feels like a step in the right direction. And you know, like, I don't know, it's I'm grateful for the whole thing of it. Yeah. And for you all, like, putting a real point on it and, like, you know, pointing to it and directing our attention. It's just like, look, this is what's going on.
Thanks for collaborating on this conversation today. We will let's see if this leads to action, but I'm really optimistic. There's some great stuff to follow up on. I have to jump to a next call right now. So if we leave it here for today, let's count on each other to pick up the threads that are worth picking up, and I know we will if they're worth it. So see you in the next call. See you asynchronously, and thanks for this one. Thanks for being here, everybody. Ivan, hope to see you again. Everybody, see you soon. Cheers.